In a fast-paced digital world where technology has changed the nature of money, integration of private and public sector digital currencies seems to be the need of the hour. Hello and welcome to Crypto TV. I'm yours truly, Vinita Chatterjee, leading you into the fascinating world of digital currencies. Today is a really special day as we have two eminent dignitaries joining us to discuss the most talked about and exciting topic doing the rounds, that is CBDC. So what is CBDC? Can CBDC replace conventional currencies? How would CBDCs benefit global trade and commerce? To discuss all these pertinent questions, we have two notable speakers and domain experts with us today, Dr. Chiragra Chakravarti and Mr. Arshdeep Jindal. Dr. Chiragra Chakravarti is the owner of Katic Consulting and an advisor to the Governor, Bank of Mauritius. He has been associated with the IMF as an expert in financial markets and forex reserve management. Dr. Chakraborty has great expertise in central banking, digital assets, economic policy and risk management. Mr. Arshdeep Jindal is a tech-based entrepreneur and founder of FinVisage from the UK. An IIT-IIM alumni, Mr. Jindal has frontline knowledge of markets, financial assets, hedging and risk management. Gentlemen, welcome on board. My first question to both my panelists would be, these days we hear a lot about CBDC, that is central bank digital currency. Most of the central banks are also showing a sense of urgency about CBDCs. So what does this concept cover? I would like to ask Dr. Chakraborty first.
I think that's a very brilliant question to start this discussion today. To start with a basic thing that what is CBDC, and as you rightly said, is central bank digital currency. What is it? It is an electronic form of central bank money. That's as simple as that, with a potential wide use in the retail segment as well as in the wholesale segment. When I say retail segment, it can be you, me, Arshdeep, everybody can use that as a very retail segment. Or if it's a wholesale segment, then where you have interbank transfer, then a big bulk transfer is happening. So that's a wholesale segment. So business value, people can also use it in a big way. So it's basically an electronic form of central bank money. That's basic definition is. How it is different from private money, which you've been using, and many people are using this private money and a government money or a central bank money. Earlier, we never used to have this discussion. Money was part of the central bank's balance sheet. There was no private money as such. Whatever the private money was that, like let's say, for example, if we go back to like our earlier days of Hawala and all this thing, that's a parallel economy, which is an illegal economy. But nowadays, private money is not illegal. So there is a concept of private money and there's a concept of central bank money. So how it is different from private money, this CBDC? The biggest difference comes here, which I always keep on saying that the CBDC will sit on the liability side of central bank. That means in case something goes wrong, central bank is sitting behind you to support that, which is not true in the private cryptocurrencies. So that's the first biggest difference comes is that the central bank digital currency is a liability of central bank and something goes wrong. So there is there to support like any other money which you have in the real term, the physical money. So that's the first thing which comes, and that's why which differentiate from the private cryptocurrency. As you rightly said, this is a trend. This is now in vogue. There are almost 60 central banks in the world are almost running for the CBDCs. They are in various stages. Some are doing research. Some are doing a pilot study. Some are already live. So we know 3 central banks, they have already live. So to answer your question, that is not anymore theory, but it is in practical now. So people are doing it. And when somebody asks me that how long it will take to be a reality, I'm saying next 2 to 3 years, it will be a reality. You'll see many central banks coming in this CBDC way. So, to answer your question, that's the difference. So it's not a theory only, it's in reality. So you can name many of the central banks like Central Bank of China, Sweden, India also has announced now, Reserve Bank of India has announced, Bank of Mauritius, from where I belong, they have announced that many central banks are already working on it. So they're at a different stage. Some has already reached the pilot study. Some are under real studies. I can name 3 central banks who are already going live on this. One is Bahamas, that is Sand Dollar. Second one is Bangkok, Cambodia. And third one is Eastern Caribbean, Dcash. These are the 3 live CBDCs which we have now, which is going. So that's absolutely a reality which has been taken care into existence. CBDC can to start the discussion, it is always beneficial for the country because CBDC will help you in digitalization, which all economies are looking for. And as we were also speaking earlier, that in COVID or a post-COVID era, that becomes a very important thing, a digitalization. So CBDC definitely plays a role in digitalization. For a country like India, or a big country or big economy, we always have a challenge of financial inclusion. And all central bank looks for that, how to enhance the financial inclusion. And I think CBDC can play a major role in that it can enhance the financial inclusion for big economy. Third important part of CBDC is that CBDC can make monetary policy as well as fiscal policy more efficient, because this will be, because what happens generally when you do a policy, and as a central banker, we always see that there is always a gestation period when your policy is announced, and after some time the effect comes in, and sometimes the effect doesn't come, or sometimes the effect is there, but you cannot see that. The reason is because the sectors are not so organized. So when you have a CBDC sort of thing, and when it is blended with digitalization, you'll see monetary policy will become more effective, as well as the fiscal policy becomes very effective to that extent. Sometimes we have seen that in very big economy, when even government wants to do a lot of fiscal stimulus because of issues like COVID and other thing, but because of lack of bank account, or because of lack of physical money reaching to the grassroots level, because of various bottlenecks, that type of fiscal stimulus does not become successful. But if you have a CBDC as is blended in a digitalization platform, you will see that it will reach the grassroots level. So that's why the fiscal stimulus can also be very effective, and fiscal policy can also be very effective.
My question now goes to Mr. Jindal. What is CBDC all about?
It's a very interesting concept, central bank digital currencies. And if we think about them fundamentally, they are functionally similar to cash. So much like cash, they are a liability on the central bank. However, a key difference being that in the case of a CBDC, this liability is recorded in digital form. A CBDC would be introduced alongside cash and would not be intended to replace it, although it is expected that the use of cash would decline over time after the introduction of a CBDC. It must fulfill a number of principles and requirements. Any CBDC that is introduced, that it should be accessible to all, it should be robust, safe, efficient, and most importantly, it should be private. So anyone should think of a CBDC as cash in digital form, and for use by citizens and businesses for their retail payments, much as they would use cash today. To answer the second part of your question about how far away are CBDCs from reality, they're very, very much in the process of becoming a reality very, very soon. So China is currently running pilots on their CBDC. They started a pilot last year in April in a few cities, and they've extended it this year as well. The Swedish central bank is currently has run a pilot before within the banking system and is now bringing in banks to see how the e-krona would be utilized in the real world. The euro, I think, the introduction of a digital euro, I think, would be the biggest step towards a CBDC, and the most consequential as well, because of the amount of area that it would cover. And the governing council of the ECB established a high-level task force in January 2020 to look into this. In October, they gave their report, and what they said was something very, very informative. The report is very good. I would recommend anyone to read it. But what they essentially said was that the cash in point of sale payments today, the share of cash in point of sale payments in the euro area is at 79%. So it's extremely high if you think about it. And therefore, there's a huge reduction for scope for use of that cash and moving towards a digital currency. And a digital euro would be essentially another way to supply euro, and it would be a risk-free central bank money because it would be a liability on the euro system. So we are very close. There are many central banks that are currently exploring CBDCs. And over the next 3 to 5 years, you will definitely see that at least a significant number of people would be living in countries where CBDCs would be live and would be working. And in my opinion, working very successfully.
On this note, I would like to ask Dr. Chakraborty, what are the major differences between CBDCs and cryptocurrencies?
I think that's again another very interesting concept because there are a lot of debates going on whether both should exist or not. If you ask me, my personal view is that both should exist. How it should exist? For me, private cryptocurrencies can be treated as an alternative asset, which should be part of various portfolios. It can be funds can invest, individual can invest, even sovereign funds can invest if their risk profile matches with their objective function. Even central bank can invest in private cryptocurrency if it matches their risk profile. That's more important. So the private cryptocurrencies can be treated as an alternative asset, whereas CBDCs, that is central bank digital currency, as it can be a replacement of a cash. For example, to make this point very simple for everyone, for example, if I am buying, let's say in my portfolio, I have foreign currencies. Let's say I want to invest in dollar, I want to invest in pound. I do that. And how do I do that? I use my local currency to buy that and invest in those currencies. Same way, if you want to do that, I want to buy Bitcoin, which is a private cryptocurrency. I do that, I keep it in my portfolio, but to buy that, I may use CBDC. So CBDCs can be a payment channel through which I buy, and the private cryptocurrencies can be an alternative asset. Why I'm saying this? The reason is if both does not exist, what will happen in this case? Let's say, for example, a certain central bank or certain jurisdiction take a call that we will have only CBDCs and investment in private cryptocurrencies will be banned. If that is the policy decision has been taken, then it will lead to flying of capital from that jurisdiction to some offshore countries where this private cryptocurrencies will be allowed to trade. So that will not be good for that particular economy where their restrictions are being put in place. So that's why I'm saying it should be both coexist, one as an alternative asset and other one as a major sovereign currency or cash, replacement of the cash. Private cryptocurrencies, there are certain issues are there which people have been raising, but I think that can be sorted out or solved by proper regulations around that. So whenever you're allowing some private cryptocurrency to be invested in your country, you can come out with a very solid regulations which can cover that, and so that those risks are not taken into consideration, that risks are minimized. And CBDCs should be there. If, let's take another example, that a certain jurisdiction says that only private cryptocurrencies will be allowed and there will be no CBDC, that can also lead to a problem. What problem? That can lead to that the private cryptocurrencies can eat your sovereign currency. So there will be no sovereign currencies. So you'll lose the sovereign independence of issuance of your own currency. And that no central banks will want for two reasons. One is obviously for an independence perspective. And second one is that if that happens, the central bank will not have any power on their hand to do monetary policies, because monetary policies, one of the tools is interest rates. And if you have private cryptocurrencies, the interest rates will not be with their local currency. So the monetary policies will be absolutely useless for that. And that can lead to a huge amount of risk for a sovereign currencies and sovereign monetary policy. So that's why I always prescribe that both the private cryptocurrencies and CBDC should coexist. Private cryptocurrencies should be used as an alternative asset, whereas CBDC should be used as a payment gateway, As well as some people wants to use as an asset, they can. If somebody wants to invest on that, they can definitely do that. Plus, the private cryptocurrencies, if we are allowing for investment, should be properly hedged or guided by good amount of governance and regulation.
So what would be your take, Mr. Jindal, on the major differences between CBDCs and digital currency?
So to understand this better, I think first of all, in my opinion, there is no threat. The financial system is big enough for the two to coexist with each other. The two, if we understand the core themes of these two asset classes, they are very different. They might have similar terminology, but they are very different, and very different in a very key way. The main difference is that a traditional, and it is a bit weird to use traditional for cryptocurrency, but I think cryptocurrency has been with us for long enough to start using the word traditional for it. So a traditional cryptocurrency like a Bitcoin, the way it is created, it is mined. It has to be mined. So what happens is, if we speak in very layman's terms, the more processing power that is used by a computer, that computer is assigned some Bitcoins. So it is directly proportional to the processing power that is going into the quote unquote mining process. So, and by virtue of how Bitcoin is designed, the problems that need to be solved to mine a new Bitcoin get progressively more and more difficult, which means there is a hard limit to the number of Bitcoins that can be issued. So, however, a CBDC is created in a very different way. A CBDC is a fiat currency, much like if the central bank tomorrow wanted to create 1,000,000 2,000 rupee notes, a central bank can go and print those 2,000 rupee notes under its policy and do it. A CBDC is similar. Central bank can decide to create new currency, and it can then create that new bits of this digital currency and distribute it in the market. So that is the key difference between the two. And this is why, if you look at Bitcoin, how was it envisaged when it came into our ecosystem? It was envisaged as an alternate form of payment. So what is private cash? But however, it has actually become an asset. So people have used it as an asset, as a store of value. And therefore, CBDCs are coming in to fill the gap. They are going to be the alternative source of payment other than cash. But the good thing here is that they will be backed by the central bank. So unlike a private cryptocurrency where there is no backing per se, it is a distributed peer-to-peer validation that happens on that currency, on the cryptocurrency. Here, in the case of a CBDC, you have the validation, the full faith and trust of the central bank who is issuing that digital currency. And the other third key difference between the two is that the record of transactions in the case of a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin is public. There is a public blockchain where all transactions can be seen by anyone. Whereas in the case of a CBDC, this would be a very private record held by the central bank of how the digital currency has flown through the financial system. So I don't think one threatens the other. I think they will coexist. They'll coexist together. And like was discussed earlier, any attempts to limit one or the other are going to be counterproductive. And I think central banks have seen that. I mean, central banks have tried to limit the impact of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, and they've seen it doesn't work. The market is free enough, large enough to find ways. If it is something that is useful to the financial participants, they will use it. So the both of them need to coexist one another within a very strong governance regulatory framework, which will then lead to a very active ecosystem which will build applications around these two financial assets, leading to their wide adoption in the economy.